So the first thing we want to do when creating a character on Advent of the Mists is to bring up the screen for logging into Advent. The first option we are met with in this intro screen is the name of our character. So the first thing we want to do is type in a name. I'm going to choose Cyanna. And once you have your name typed in, it'll give you a list of 4 things that we actually don't accept for names of characters. The first one is the name cannot be taken from popular science fiction or fantasy. We do not accept names like Frodo or Gandalf or Xena or anything like that. And the second option is the words cannot be taken from dictionary words or combinations thereof. This is mostly geared towards names like Icetooth or Death or Satan or anything like that. Names that don't particularly fit into a fantasy world at all. It doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't really add to the roleplay, and it's just cheesy. The third option is that names cannot be modern or contemporary names. We're not looking for characters named Bob or James or anything like that. And the fourth option is the names have to be able to be pronounced and typed easily. We've had characters with the name like XZZTQYF whatever, and that's not a word. It's not something you can pronounce. It's not something you can even easily type. And in a text-based game, that's pretty important to be able to type the name of the people that you're talking to or role-playing with. So, Cyanna is an acceptable name, so I'm going to type yes, that these meets the guidelines. And then you want to type in your password. It doesn't have to be a minimum length. I think maybe 3 letters is the minimal. I'm not exactly sure. It doesn't have to have numbers. It is suggested that it does. I'm not going to for this purpose. And you retype it for confirmation. The next option is your family name or last name, and it's also called a surname. This is not required, and it can be added later by the staff if you come up with one later. I'm not going to come up with one for this tutorial, but this is pretty much just your last name. Your next option is the race you want to play. We have 12 races on Advent, one of which is not playable at this time. And you can see a sentence that pretty much gives a brief overview of each race. But if you wanted to find out more about a particular race, like if I wanted to find out more about brownies, I would type help brownie. That would give me another help file that goes into more detail about the brownies, and it also says here that if I want more information on the brownies, I can type help brownie history or some other help file that's similar to that, and that'll give me a little bit more detail on that race. If I forget which race options there are, just type help in this section, and it'll bring up the list of races again. And for this one, I'm going to choose a human. And this brings us to our section on choosing your birth month. This is a lot like a zodiac system, which almost everybody's pretty familiar with. We based it off of the 12 months of the game. And what you do is you basically read a help file based on whichever one you want more information on, and it'll give you an idea of what stats you will start out with. A lot of MUDs use a stat rolling system for this, where you just continually roll stats until you get stats that you want to start out with. And I've seen other MUDs use a question system where they ask you a bunch of questions about how your character would react to certain situations, and they base your stats off of that. We chose this one because it gave us a way to allow players to customize their character without giving too much information away. It also gave them a starting point for personality if they wanted, if they couldn't think of one. For example, this help month of storms, it says that mortals are agile in wit and physical energy, and you can safely assume off of that that you are given some stats to your intelligence, your stamina, and the fact that it says it's perfect balance between magicians and athletes could assume that it also helps your aura, which is good for mages. It's another stat for magic. Also in this paragraph it talks about how people under this month are emotionally unstable, they tend to give into peer pressure. They're a lot like women. They go from one extreme to the other as far as emotions are concerned. That could give you a starting point for personality for your character. It's not required. It's just another option. There are several months that give different type of personality traits that you can incorporate into your character if you choose to do so. So I'm going to type Storms as my option. Your next one's pretty basic, choosing the gender for your character. I'm going to go with female. And then we get the option of and see color. Basically, this is whether you want to see color on the screen or not. As you can see above, there's some teal in the screen here. We always recommend people typing yes here just because it helps differentiate between different sections of the game. It helps differentiate between a room title, room description, who's talking, who's not. And you do have the option to turn it on or off in-game. So if you decide you want it now and you don't like it, you can turn it off later just by using the color command. So I'm going to choose yes. And now we are at linking to an account. This is actually fairly important, and we always recommend people to link to an account, even though some people don't right now. We will probably make it required later on. But basically what you do here is you create an account to link all of your characters to. And what that allows you to do is when you gain what's called a roleplay point, which are very important and you'll learn about later, you can actually interchange your roleplay points between your characters. If one dies, you have roleplay points on your account. You can use them to boost a new character without having to work so hard, essentially. So I'm going to hit yes. And it asks for an account name. A lot of people use their first name for this, or their actual real life name, but it can be whatever you want, a usual screen name you use. I'm going to use Acoustic Dryad, because that's a name I use a lot. And it does not let me, so we're going to just choose a random name like Alice. And it asks for a password for Alice. And just use the same password as my player file. You can use the same passwords for everything if you want, it doesn't really matter. And then you're met with a screen called the Message of the Day. It's a bunch of random strings that basically go over current events, important help files, any updates that you might need to know. A lot of people get used to seeing this screen every time they log in, so they skip over it. Even I do that. But it is recommended that you at least look over it once a week or so for any updates. A lot of the current events are kept on here, or also on the website, so we can hit enter to go through the screen, and then you are put into the game. And then we recommend watching the tutorial on how to go through the newbie area and some basic commands.